Welcome everybody. Here we are for our life skill series yet again. We are technically recording, but we will see where this recording ends up. We shall see how the whole thing goes. I want to start. I know many of you, if not all of you guys know me by now. I'm Michal Weiss. I run Living Chassidus here in Crown Heights, but also Living Chassidus has expanded, Baruch Hashem, and now all of our programs, before COVID, all of our programs were also on Zoom. So we were always available and here for everybody, no matter where you were. But our main purpose is to be, is to be here in Crown Heights, caring for the women of Crown Heights, single and married, and so usually our group is usually within their 20s and 30s. And I think that's one of the reasons why our life skill series is geared primarily towards that crew in that area. We, as part of Living Chassidus, we have the aspect of living and the aspect of Chassidus, and then the combination of the two. So our life skill series is our attempt at educating women about the topics that they will be living with. That way they can live the life that they want to live with the Chassidish perspective, with the Chassidish viewpoint. So I don't have the logo behind me, but as you can see, the Hashem glasses are on, and every single thing we do, whether it's we bring midwives or we bring financial education or we bring how to get organized and how to, get your life in where you want it to be, all of that comes from the perspective of Chassidus. So, or whatever, if they can hear me, I'll just keep these for now. Thank you. They can hear me. Okay, so with that said, I wanted to explain a little bit why Living Chassidus does life skill series, and we bring topics about pregnancy and childbirth and all these different topics to be discussed for also single women. So it's in the beginning we had this idea because many of my friends reach the point that they're engaged, and by the time you get engaged, you're busy with Kallah classes. By the time you get married, you're busy being in Shana Rishona and spending that incredible quality time with your husband. And so therefore you haven't really thought so deeply about pregnancy, or many times not even finances, or how to organize your home that in this new marriage. So I wanted to help those people, help women be prepared for those stages. And it came up with a question: should we educate women about pregnancy, and should we educate women about let me see this. Not on. Okay. And should we educate women about these topics? And Baruch Hashem, we spoke to our Rav in Living Chassidus, and we spoke to our Mashpia, and both of them said, yes, that is beautiful and wonderful. And Baruch Hashem, it is one of our biggest hits. So here we are educating women about all these beautiful topics. That way they are prepared by the time they get married, and pregnancy sometimes happens before you even think it can happen. So many times we think, oh, whatever, when the time, thank you. By the time by the time it comes, I'll figure it out then. But according to the minhag is that we don't tell about our pregnancy early on. And so therefore many of us are left especially the first time around, kind of, groping in the dark. What are we going to do about this? And what should I know? What should I not know? I didn't even know such a thing existed. I recently had a friend who gave birth, and she was like, whoa, I hadn't even heard of, the pelvic floor. So here we are educating women in all these wonderful things, so that now when you have the time to really think about it, you can take that time, you can process it. And then when you get into the situation that you're the one living through such an experience, you are the educated partner. So I wanted to share my personal experience, because anytime I share about my birth experience or about my viewpoint on newborns and my tips about newborns, many people are like shocked, and they think, wow, how is that even possible? I never knew such an experience was possible. So I realized I started doing this thing that as soon as I can tell someone's pregnant, or as soon as someone tells me that they're pregnant, I try and have a conversation with them and give them a heads up that things can be wonderful. Things can be beautiful, and things don't have to be scary. And it's such an incredible shift in mind when we bring Chassidus into our births, when we bring more of a beautiful mindset as opposed to a fear-driven mindset into our births. So I want to speak a bit about my experience. I'm the oldest in my family, and I got married at 19. So I had zero knowledge about pregnancy, about birth, about newborns. Literally, I think with my oldest, the first time I held him in my hands was the first time ever in my life I had held a newborn. So I think I learned, in a certain sense, I learned the hard way. But because I knew that, I made a very, very big point of taking birth classes. So I actually see that as the biggest investment that you can make in your life, that you take as many classes as possible. As there's a famous, quote that goes around that a lot of people do more research on their cameras, their laptops, or their cars than on how their baby is going to be born and what's going to happen to their own bodies. And the ramifications of your decisions with your own bodies it's for the rest of your life. This is the body that carries your beautiful neshama through. You have to take good care of it. So what I decided was, and this is very, this is earlier on in my marriage, where finances were definitely not the easiest thing, but we decided to make an investment. And I actually took 2 birthing classes from 2 different teachers that had 2 separate perspectives, because I wanted to be as educated as I possibly could be. So with that said, I took 1 class, which was more on the mentality and, coping mechanisms, and it had some amount of Chassidus. And that was beautiful and nice. And the other class I took, which was more technical terms, medical, what could happen, what does this mean, what are definitions, how does our body react to this, how does our body react to that. So both of those classes were beautiful, incredible. Actually, neither teacher teaches. So if you're going to ask me which ones did I take and if you should take them, neither of those, they're not teaching anymore. But I definitely suggest you do research and find as many classes or as many things as you can in the style that you believe in. So it's not every class is the same, and you have to figure out which class is the right class for you and what you want to accomplish. So I want to begin by saying that in my life, I never just take a class and that's it. I live by the mindset that we are always learning, we're always growing, we're always expanding our circles and expanding our knowledge and getting to know new people and experiencing new things. So I want to first start by saying, please take class. If, even if you've had a baby already, it doesn't hurt to take another class. Again, search for classes that match the mindset that you're trying to accomplish. So not every class is made equal, but as you know, I'm a slight bookaholic. So I want to give you some ideas of some books that you could read that could give the Chassidus perspective on things. If you'd like a list of books about the more Gashmias perspective on things, I can also give you that. But for now, I'll give you the Chassidus perspective. The first book I'll suggest is Shall We Have Another? This is a book that discusses a lot of back and forth, up and down, side to side, all the arguments and questions that you might have about Puruvu and the mitzvah. And it's a very, very, very powerful and beautiful book. And it could really set the tone beautifully for your pregnancy and for giving birth. Another book I very strongly suggest, although this is not the typical print, this is a special print that was made and it was given to me as a gift, but it's Towards a Meaningful Life. The second chapter is on birth. The way it's written is that it speaks about you and your birth and how important you are. And as it says from the Rebbe, birth is Hashem saying you matter. So all of this and how to view birth and how to view children and how to view, I wouldn't say, pregnancy also, but it's a very, very powerful book. And it has every single chapter I strongly suggest you read. In regards to the Rebbe's perspective on birth and what you should have in mind and some things to think about, I definitely suggest Teachings of the Rebbe on Chinuch. It has an incredible chapter on that in there as well. For Minhagim, It's Kaivetz Minhagim. You can also find it in Sefer Minhagim, and you can also find it in, I'm pretty sure it's the same in Eternal Joy Volume 3. Although Eternal Joy Volume 3 also has beautiful things on marriage and Shalom Bayis. So they're both great. I would suggest reading both of them. And last but not least, short and a nice, enjoyable book, but it has some really, really powerful short stories or, small quotes or small ideas about birth. So it's called The Edifice, Dating, Marriage, and Everlasting Home. I wouldn't say it's particularly about birth, but it definitely has viewpoints that match with what I'm going to discuss. And inclusion and the power of the individual. So this book is technically about children with special needs, but in that topic, it discusses children and the viewpoint on children. And it really sets the tone very powerfully about how important each child is and how important each one of us are. So I want to suggest this one as well. Okay. So with that said, last week or a few weeks ago, we actually had Irit Ling, and she spoke about pain and fear and how when we enter with a mindset, any experience, whether it's your first day of school, whether it's, your first interview at work, when you enter with a mindset of fear and anxiety, so your whole body reacts. So many of us have that, that's like sweaty palms, or like we feel our heart beating stronger, or our breathing is a little bit heavier, and we're very focused in what's around us and what's going on, and the whole process. So we have to realize, Chassidus explains very clearly, it means that our mindset, the way we think, literally affects our heart, and not just our heart, but our entire body. Our mindset has a direct correlation to our physical reaction. So the way you feel is very much impacted by how you're thinking about things. So for example, if you're coming into a situation and you're petrified, then your body is going to have different reactions. I'll give you another example. There are many people, me included, that when I'm stressed out, sometimes my back starts to hurt, whether it's my shoulder blades or my lower back, and the way we feel about things has an effect. So it's been shown that there's a correlation between how we view labor, what fears we're going into it, and how that affects how our body reacts to the process of bringing a child out into this world. So I want to try and give you some ideas and some perspectives on how I deal with my personal labors and how I view them, and why I think this was one of the many reasons that led to the most incredible and powerful birth experience I just went through about 5 months ago. And so I'll share with you how I prepare for my births. And then hopefully after that, I'll also share a bit of my birth story with my last baby. And then I'll share, hopefully I'll share a bit of that and some tips on newborns. So I want to start by saying that when we learn Chassidus, especially when we learn on a constant basis, we can definitely appreciate that challenges and struggles and hardships are not here to torture us. There is a outside of Chassidus mindset, which is that, you did something wrong, you're going to get punished, you're going to suffer for it, and Hashem's out to get you, and, it's a revenge. He's taking revenge on you. And as much as it's not our mindset whatsoever, sometimes I hear it, it seeps into our lingo, it seeps into our discussions and into our time spent together. So I want to start by saying that before we enter birth, we have to realize that the experience that we're going to go through, which is, I wouldn't say it's easy. It's not like a walk in the park or, a nice breezy stroll by the beach. It's not quite that. But at the same time, when we enter it, having this mindset that this is a punishment, or Hashem's trying to torture us, or this is, this is going to hurt. This is going to be really rough and hard and horrible. So again, what we said before was our mind affects our bodies. And when we start to think that way, and we start to shape our experience and prepare ourselves for the worst, then our bodies also react. And physically speaking, when we are afraid, I mean, if I go and I jump right at you, so your body shuts down and it does this clenching motion. And meanwhile, when we're trying to bring a baby out into the world, our body is trying to open up, right? The stomach, this is, let's say, the uterus, and baby's inside. Again, you guys can watch Irit Lang's talk. She gave a whole beautiful explanation. And when the baby is coming down, we have to open up and basically push baby down. So if we are scared, what our body does is it goes, and then it squeezes on the baby tighter, and then it's harder for baby to come out. So we have to try and work hard in order to in order to really prepare ourselves for labor, and view it from hopefully a positive experience and an enjoyable. It's not easy, but it doesn't have to be torture. And there's a balance there. And that's why I want to speak about our viewpoint on challenges, because Hashem is not here to punish us. Hashem is not here to punish us. Hashem is here to help us grow. And I'm going to discuss that a little bit more. So, any experience in our lives which leads to growth goes through a stage of struggle, right? We speak about it in Chassidus a lot, that there's yesh and there's ayin, and between every yesh, every stage where you are settled and calm and living in a certain experience, and once you need to grow into something else, there's an open space, which is ayin, which is unsettled, which is I don't know where I'm headed, and I don't know where I am. There's one foot here and one foot there, and at one point you have to let go of both and kind of float midair. So, for example, for many of you who have gone to seminary, booking that ticket is one step, and knowing you want to go to that seminary is one step. But when you're actually on the flight, there's this level of ayin. You're literally unsettled. You're not home anymore. You're not in your schedule. You're not in your regular routine with your comfort zone, but you're also not in seminary settled yet. And even the first week, you're still in ayin. You're still trying to figure out who are your friends, what's the schedule like, what's the life, what's our life schedule like. So between every settled stage in life, there's a time period which is unsettled. And so I want to discuss a little bit about labor. Labor is that middle point in between settled. I mean, even pregnancy for some people is very unsettling, but after 9 months of it, I think most people kind of get used to a certain extent of it. They've come to terms with some part of it. So there's pregnancy, and then there's being settled with your baby and back in a routine, whether it's your first child and then you're literally learning a whole new experience. But then after a few months, then you got the drill. You know your baby, you know your schedule. Yes, there's unknowns and there's different things and life keeps going, but there's a certain sense of settled. So that stage in between kind of gets kicked off. It gets started with this concept of labor. You are giving birth not just to a new child, but you're giving birth to a new you. You're giving birth, whether it's from going from being a couple to now being a mother and being, having another child, being a family together. It's a jump. It takes that unknown middle stage to get from one place to the other place. And even if you have other children, it takes an unknown middle stage to get from being a mother of 3 to being a mother of 4, or being a mother of 3 boys to being a mother of 3 boys and a girl. So all of that is a stage that it is already unsettling. And so we don't have to see it as Hashem's torturing us. Hashem's not challenging us. Hashem's not putting us to the test because he's, coming here and checking us out and pushing our buttons or poking at us or anything like that. This is just the process it takes to make a mother. And once you see it that way, it just gives a whole new perspective. A challenge is not bad. A challenge is just the middle ground between settled, growth, and settled. Challenge equals growth. So every stage of the way, as long as we say, okay, this discomfort that I'm feeling right now, whether it's contractions or whether it's pushing or whether it's, that middle stage of, I know I'm due soon, when is it going to be? And feeling so unsettled. This is the one thing we have this and the gender, we have no control over. We don't know when it's going to be. And even if somebody Chas v'shalom has to get induced, Hashem is still in charge of that induction process. We have no control over it. So that middle stage doesn't have to be bad. We have to talk ourselves into and forbraying, whether it's with our friends, our mashpia, our husband. Our husband is a big one because he's also going through something and he's also experiencing you going through something. So taking that time to forbraying, and the goal of the forbraying is changing our mindset. This is not bad. This is not going to be horrible. This is not going to be, the horrible thing that leads to something good. The entire process, the whole channel of changing, the whole channel of growth can be good. It's hard. Anything hard is hard. Riding a bike the first few times and you scrape your knees, it's hard. Taking the first steps as a baby, it's hard, but it's good. So you can see things and you can work on yourself, and through these svarim and through having discussions with the right people on seeing that as much as something can be hard, it's not bad. Something that is challenging is just the process of making you who you're meant to be. Okay, so with that said, one second. One perspective that could really help, especially in my opinion, with contractions, some people call it surges, waves, whichever lashon you want to speak about, is that every single one of them is one step closer to baby coming. So on the one hand, as many of us know, they start pretty slow. For some people, it could be an hour apart, and it's like, oh, that I felt that, but it wasn't such a big deal. It's kind of like a period cramp. Okay, I was able to handle that. It's not a big deal. And then it's, let's say, 30 seconds, and then you wait an hour, and then another 30 seconds, and then you wait an hour and another 30 seconds. It could start like that, or it could start as every 20 minutes. It could start as every 10 minutes, and it slowly but surely the time span between them gets shorter, and the actual length of the contraction, generally speaking, gets longer. So when you see when you see your contractions in this process, which is the same thing as seeing the world, but when you see your contractions in this process of every challenge that's coming up is one step closer to my baby, your mindset changes, and you hopefully are working towards looking forward to the next one. It's hard. Don't get me wrong. It is very hard. And some of them get really, really, really hard. But you're not dreading the next one, because when you dread the next one, remember, your body goes, and when your body goes, then the cervix has a harder time dilating, then the uterus has a harder time opening up for baby and helping baby down, then your whole body, your breathing is affected, baby's breathing is affected. So our goal is to try and set our mindset as positive and as looking forward to the next contraction as you physically possibly can. Again, I'm not saying it's easy, but if we know what we're trying to work towards, so then we can hopefully do it. And the more practice, and that's the crazy part about it, that I think for myself, I'm like, oh my God, especially after having my first, I'm like, oh my gosh, how do people do this? Like 8 times, 9 times. I know someone who has 14 kids. How on earth are they doing this multiple times? This was insane. But again, it's like any sport, kind of. It's like any sport, that the more you work on it and the more you do it, the better you get at it, hopefully. So it might be that this upcoming birth, or the first birth you have, you might not have this mindset, the mindset I'm speaking of, But at least if you know that that's what you're working towards with every labor, you'll hopefully be getting closer and closer. And I can speak about that for myself. I just had my baby a few months ago, and I could tell that I got better at it, essentially, as funny as that may sound. But I got more in tune with my body. I got more in tune with what I needed to have around me. I was more in tune with the mindset. And for many people, it's an experience of getting to know yourselves. So for me, my first labor had a lot of silence. I was too afraid to speak up. I felt too uncomfortable to make anybody else uncomfortable. So I didn't want to say that I was cold. I didn't want to say that I was hot. And as I'm growing and as I'm having more children, I'm realizing I have to be sensitive to myself, and I have to realize I'm bringing a baby into this world. I need to speak up when I need to speak up. So my labors, the more I've gotten to know myself and the more I've prepared for them, the easier it has been to fight the silent Yetzer that get to us. The what ifs, those hidden fears, what could happen if my baby this, or what could happen if I this, or what could happen if, and having and bringing in Hashem and bringing in this concept of anything I do, no matter what happens, it's all the Eibishter. And I have to choose what's best for me with the knowledge that I have. So having all of that in mind, every labor you get to know your Yetzer Hara better, and every labor you get to fight your Yetzer Hara better, and try and pushing away those scary thoughts, or try and push away those fears, or try and push away the hesitations. All of that could make a very, very big impact on every single labor, and you can get better at it, so to speak. Okay, so now we spoke about the mindset and the realization that Hashem is in charge, the realization that something that's challenging or hard doesn't mean that it's bad. And you can train yourself to look forward to the next challenging thing because it is getting you closer to the end result. So I'm trying to think what's a good example, but sometimes cooking, I personally have a hard time knowing that I'm about to get my entire kitchen a disaster. And every step of the way, it's like, oh my gosh, this is making more mess. And I do not like washing dishes. So it's making more mess and more mess and more mess. But I know that every step of the way, as much as it's a challenge, so to speak, to keep pulling out different tools, I know that the end result hopefully will be very delicious food. So it makes it worth it. I know that's a bad example, but just train yourself to see challenges not as something bad that's trying to torture you, but preferably as something that is leading you and getting you closer. And it's leading you and getting you closer to your goal. So somebody just sent in a beautiful example. Thank you very much for that. It's, imagine you're getting a degree. Yes. So working towards some sort of certification in something, it gets challenging, but you have to see every step of the way as closer to the beautiful end result. So that's number one. Yes. Number one. Number two, I want to explain about this concept of you are literally creating with Hashem himself. So I've said this to a few people before, but some people don't really believe me, I think, because they laugh and I'm like, she doesn't get it. But for me, my labor and my birth, I literally see it as holier than Yom Kippur. This is the one time when I am raw, I am bare, I am me and my thoughts and my nefesh elokis and Hashem. Like it's just me and Hashem. And together we are creating, we are bringing a life into this world. And my tefillas during that time, I'm not sitting there trying to, quickly say the stuff I need to say to be able to catch up to the chazan, or now that I'm a mother and I stay home because I'm nursing or whatnot. I'm not, it's not a point of fasting, but it literally is, it's just Hashem and I. Kind of like there's a famous story of Reb Mendel Futterfass that at one point, during his incarceration or torture years, he would save little pieces of the bread that he would get every day, and he would put it in his coat or his, his shirt or whatnot, his suit pocket. And he would slowly make little pieces and make quote unquote lechem mishnah for Shabbos. And at one point, he found, or he saw a river, or he found a river, and he went to dip in the river as a mikvah. Freezing, freezing, freezing cold. And so he had to take off his clothes and goes into the river or the, whatever water type of pool. When he comes out, he realizes that someone had stolen all of his clothes. And it was just him, bare with Hashem. And there was no challah for lechem mishnah, the little bits of bread that he had gathered. There was no coats. He was freezing, freezing, freezing cold. And meanwhile, he celebrated. And the famous story is that he celebrated that moment. Why? Because there was nothing else separating him from the Eibishter. There was literally nothing separating him from the Eibishter. So I see my labor as the exact same thing. And once I realize I am creating and Hashem is with me, and I feel Hashem at every step of the way, and at one point when I'm struggling and I'm going through a really tough stage of labor, I just say, Hashem, please help me. And I feel that Hashem is literally right there with me, because he is there to create. He's there to bring this child, this something from nothing into this world with me. And when you see it from that perspective, it helps you appreciate the environment that you're in, and it helps you appreciate who you're with. And hopefully that'll also give you comfort. That'll help you help you feel safer and more settled in your process and in your and in bringing this child into the world. So that's more of the kedusha, the mindset, the holiness of it. But I also want to discuss setting a general atmosphere. So for myself, one of the many reasons I chose home birth is after doing a lot of research, after meeting with home birth midwives, and after seeing all the technical on paper research that seeing all the technical paperwork that it's the same risk being in a hospital than it is the same risk being at home. And after obviously meeting with my midwife and interviewing her and feeling safe with her, so I chose home birth. And one of the many, many, many perks, which for me, I see it as a safe, it helps me feel safer. And so therefore I have a safer birth, is the fact that I am in my own home, in my own environment. I get to set up the environment how I want to. You could also accomplish all of these things to a certain extent in the hospital, but for me, I feel that it is safer and more comfortable, and because it is more comfortable, it's also safer because I am not nervous. So therefore I am feeling better, and therefore my labors go smoother. So again, Hashem's in charge, but b'derech hateva, that's kind of something to keep in mind. So one of the many things that I do is that I set the atmosphere in my home. I make plan for where my kids are going to be. Depending, I could give birth at this time, or I could give birth at that time. And there's always a plan B, who could take them, where could they go? Or if they're sleeping, what would happen? So Baruch Hashem, for almost all of my births have been at night. And so my kids have slept right through it. Not a problem whatsoever. So they just wake up and suddenly there's a beautiful new sibling in the home. But again, throughout that entire process, I do have a backup plan. Who's going to take them and where are they going to go if they happen to be up, and et cetera, et cetera. So having in mind who's going to be there, who's not going to be there, the people in the room can make a very, very big difference. And I've actually personally had that. I've had somebody who I didn't expect to be at my labor actually by hashgacha pratis happened to end up being at my labor. And I could tell that my comfort zone and my ability to be vulnerable and be given over, because that's what we have to do. We have to be given over to the process. Our body and Hashem is running our body the entire step of the way. We are not controlling it. And I know this is very scary for many people, and I myself had to work on it very, very hard. But to give yourself over to the process and give yourself over to Hashem, because You can't control the way this is going to work. You can't. You can't control the way this birth is going to work, and you can't control the way your body is going to bring baby out. All you can do is get out of the way and help. So getting out of the way means if you set the environment and or yourself and your mindset and you're fighting it. So again, your body will do like this, your mindset will be and then the whole process will be fighting against Hashem's will be fighting against the process that the body needs to go through. So getting out of the way is just let go. I know it's a famous thing, let go and let God, but this was the time in my life that I feel the most helpless, but that I feel the most empowered. I am empowered in letting Hashem do what he needs to do. And it is such a magical experience when you see it that way, that you are getting out of the way, you are not in control, Hashem is in control, and this is the process by which you go. So the people that are in the room could either add to this mindset or it could detract from this mindset. So make sure that the people that are there with you are people you want there. You want them to be there. And even though some of us have guilt trips about who we should have, who we shouldn't have, or, oh my gosh, I hired this doula, but now when I think about it, I'm feeling really guilty. I actually had to do that once. I technically had asked somebody to be my doula. And at the moment, I just realized it just wasn't the right fit. And so in the end, I just didn't end up calling her. Afterwards, I apologized and all that stuff. But like, you have to be aware that the people around you do make an impact in your birth. It does make a difference. So try and think about who is going to be there and how you can make that the most enjoyable environment experience. Also, discussing your fears beforehand. It's one of the most incredible things I do with my midwife. She comes for about an hour. It's about 50 minutes to an hour. And we spend probably 15 minutes, not even probably 10 minutes on all the like medical stuff and checking heart rate and checking baby and checking baby's heart and blood work and all the tests and whatever. It technically takes about 10, 15 minutes. The rest of the time, she's checking up on how I'm feeling. What's my mindset going into this? Are there any fears? Are there any things about being a mom? I know my first time I was very nervous. As I told you guys before, the first time I ever held a newborn was my own newborn. Like I had never experienced birth. I had never experienced newborns. I'd never experienced babies, period. So we dealt a lot with that. We discussed the fears. We discussed what I could do about those fears, how I can get myself more educated or more prepared, because your mindset and your fears come into it. So something that I did for this birth, I should have brought them out. I didn't bring them out. But something that I did for this birth is that one of the activities I did with my kids was that we were going to decorate my room. And so I gave all the kids, I brought out pictures of our family and I brought out markers and pencils and stickers and whatever. And each of them got to make signs to welcome the baby or signs to like cheer mommy on. So we all decorated and then I can't really see them. But anyway, I put them all around my room because I give birth in my room. So any way in any direction I would look, I had something that would give me a positive mindset. So for example, one of the signs said bitachon. The other sign said Hashem's taking care of you. Another sign said welcome baby, we're so excited to have you. And we decorated it and we put our family's pictures. And so not only did I have my own work that I was doing on my own and, working through my fears and trying to clear them out and all that stuff, but I also had my family supporting me. And every time I looked up, no matter where I was, I saw my kids, I saw my husband's picture, I saw them, their pictures, not literally them, but I saw their faces smiling at me. And it just gave me such a boost and such a love and such a boost of confidence. So you can definitely make signs and decorate your room. You should also think about the lights, what I like giving birth, because birth is an experience of vulnerability within yourself and within everybody in the room. So yes, we try to a certain extent. For myself, I try my hardest to stay as sneeze as possible, but birth is one of those times, kind of like showering. You can't be tutznius in the wrong time. Like if you're literally wearing every single thing in the shower, then you kind of miss the point. There's a time and a place for everything. So as much as it's an experience of, you're literally bare to a certain extent, and baby's coming out, and it's a very raw experience. And so that whole experience is very vulnerable. And in order to be vulnerable, you have to let go. You have to let go of expectations. You have to let go of your process and what you think and what are they going to think. Oh my gosh, my midwife's going to see me. And like, don't worry, you're not the first and you're not the last. Like it's that process of letting go of all those fears. And so for me, I feel a lot more comfortable, and I feel like I'm able to be more vulnerable and let go of expectations and fears of what someone's going to say or what they're going to think, or me thinking about what someone else is thinking. And I'm able to do that when the lights are dim. So there's lights, they could be dim. You could even have candles, you can have scents. I prepared some, different smells and essential oils and a diffuser. I'm also very, very sensitive to music. So I'll give you guys the heads up. What I did was maybe it wasn't my first. No, my first I listened to Nigunim, like soft Nigunim. It was nice. My second, I picked some of my favorite Nigunim, and my really good friend, a huge shout out to Anna, she helped me. I recorded my husband reading a script and like encouraging me, and she helped me put them together, the Nigunim as the backdrop, and then my husband speaking. It was super, super, super powerful. I think I did that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did that also with my third. And now with my last one, or not last, but my latest one, I had a plan B. I realized that when I'm tired in the morning, and labor can sometimes take a long time. And a big part of labor is endurance, to being able to push through, even though you're getting tired, and even though it's like, okay, I'm tired of this. So I realized I was very sensitive. I tried to be very sensitive to myself. And I thought, what is something that gives me energy when I'm feeling low energy? And I realized in the morning when I'm feeling low energy, what do? I play some upbeat music. So I said, okay, it might be kind of awkward to have upbeat music when I'm trying to, relax and let baby come. And so I discussed it with my midwife, and she actually gave me a lot of chizuk, and she said, you know what, if that's what gives you energy, so like try it. So what I did was I actually made a mix of music, which was half of it is upbeat and half of it is more mellow. And I also made a recording of my husband giving me chizuk, and I put it with a niggin in the back, so they play together. So I had all three options. In the end, I prepared and I worked, and this is something that I do, that the few weeks before giving birth, every night I try to listen to the track of my husband's encouragement and whatever, and then at night I try to like take deep breaths and practice my breathing, think about my pushing, et cetera, and I start to work myself up towards giving birth. And so during that time period, I listened to my husband. And then in the actual birth, I actually ended up mixing the faster, more beady, energetic music with the more slow tempo music. And it worked beautifully. It was just perfect. Like Hashem just took care of my playlist, and he realized when I needed to go more inwards and really give myself chizuk in a calm way. And then he also realized when I needed some like upbeat, like, you got this, you're gonna rock it out, it's gonna be amazing. So every person is different. Just have in mind, that all of these are options and what kinds of sounds you can play for yourself. And also I tried my hardest to prepare kedusha. So I, share malais and like all the different, whatever it is that I wanted to prepare, that I wanted to be there. Some people there's like a famous Rebbe dollar. Some people there's different things that you can prepare in Mitzad Kedusha that you can be aware of. So, okay, let me just check time. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to jump into the newborn section. I I have a plan. After the newborns, I'm going to give some tips and some ideas on newborn care. And then afterwards, I want to, if you guys are interested, I'm going to share a bit about my birth with my baby just now, with baby Chana, and how magical it was, and how I was, it truly changed my life. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here speaking, because my birth with Chana, I wish that everybody has a birth like that, and I hope that you have it like that and even better. So, okay, so I'm going to go quickly through newborn stage. Okay, so as I said, when I gave birth to my first, I had never met, I had never held, I'd never even probably seen a newborn in my life. So this was definitely a very new experience. And I had to learn, in a certain sense, the hard way. So I learned an incredibly valuable piece of information that I hope everybody takes to heart. Newborns are not a different species of human. Newborns are just a small version of a human. So every single thing that you go through, every single experience that you go through, whether it's hunger, hangry for many of us, whether it's tired, whether it's a painful, something's hurting us, whether it is discomfort, if you're cold, if you're hot, you don't necessarily like sitting in a dirty, I mean, if I were to tell you that you'd have to sit in a dirty diaper for a long time, you probably would not be thrilled by that idea. So newborns and babies in general are just small humans. They have the exact same things we have. I know many people that, take an approach and they're like, I'm trying to figure out this new species. Like, how do I fit this species of human into a box? And that's not necessarily how we're meant to look at it. We are meant to just be sensitive to their needs. Just like you. If I were to try and fit you into a box and I would schedule your entire, and I'm not saying, I'm not pro or against scheduling. That's not what I'm discussing, but I'm just giving this as an example. And if I were to tell you exactly when you need to eat, when you need to poop, when you need to go to the bathroom, when you need to, and then anytime you show discomfort, I'm not sensitive to what you're trying to tell me. So then eventually you're probably not going to be very happy. You're probably going to be pretty cranky at me. So newborns and babies are literally small humans that are just trying to communicate in the way that they can. And the way they communicate is primarily through crying, not because they're obnoxious, not because they're a bad baby. I've heard that before, and I want to just give another disclaimer here. Please, I beg you, beg you, as much as you can, don't label your children. Don't label your newborn. Your newborn, there is no bad baby. There is no bad kid. There is no fussy baby. They're not inherently fussy. They're not inherently bad. Newborns are just trying to communicate, and the only way they're communicating is through crying. And until you get the message, they will continue to do so. So the way I view it is that if my baby is crying a lot, if my baby is crying a lot, then it means that I haven't figured out what they need. So imagine I don't speak English, and here I am, and I'm like mumbling away, and I keep mumbling at you, and at the end of the day, you're like, oh my gosh, Michal's mad annoying. Michal is not mad. Okay, maybe something, but no, Michal's not mad annoying. Michal is trying to communicate. You just don't understand my language. But Michal is just trying to communicate. So too with babies. Please, I beg you, don't label your baby as a bad baby. Don't label your baby as a fussy baby, because once you label them, you're going to take a new pair of eyes and see them from a different perspective. And chas v'shalom, they're not really fussy. They're just trying to communicate. Now, your job is to be the detective to figure out what they're trying to tell you. So something to keep in mind is that when you are sensitive to yourself, you can also be sensitive to your baby. So if you're sensitive to yourself and you're able to realize, when I get tired, this is how I react. When I get overtired, I know for myself, I'll be completely honest. If I'm still up by like 10:30, I get a second wind of energy. But then I am not thinking straight. I'm just overtired, but on overdrive. So I'm doing stuff, but I'm not at my highest point of thinking. So babies have a similar thing. Sometimes they're tired and they're very unhappy. And so it sounds a little cranky. And then they suddenly get a lot of energy. And so we think, oh, they're fine. They don't need a nap. But really, it's possible that they're just like you. They just got that second wind of energy. And now they're cranky, super tired, and acting like they have energy. So the more you're aware of yourself, the more you're able to be sensitive to your child's needs and what they're actually trying to what they're trying to tell you. Some of the things to keep in mind, specifically with babies, is that, or no, not specific, with all of us, but keeping in mind with babies, is that we are the only species of mammal that we proactively let our children sit in their own dirtiness for however long. You're not trying to get your money's worth by making sure that the nappy is filled all the way to the fullest extent, because realize that you're just accustoming your child to sit in dirt, not literally, and dirty, and whether it's wet or whether it's other things, and so having in mind that they might be uncomfortable when their diaper is dirty, even though the diaper hasn't been filled to the fullest extent, but they might be uncomfortable even if it's just a bit dirty. It might give you a realization that many times when we might think that our kids are fussy, we're just thinking, okay, they're fussy, but in reality, all they're trying to say is, Mommy, I'm really uncomfortable feeling all wet down there. Another thing to note is how active they are. Sometimes they want to play, but realize that the stages, from a newborn barely wants to play. Their awake time is minimal. As they get older, they get more awake time. And so being aware of, okay, how old are they? How much energy do they have? And once they're running out of that energy, try and catch the nap before they're overtired and cranky. So being aware of that, being aware of yourself when you're overtired and cranky, can help you see that in your baby. One second. Oh, also being aware of your environment. If you're feeling hot, they might also be hot. If you're feeling cold, they might also be cold. And being aware of being sensitive to them. So I know this might be controversial. You can take it or leave it. I'm talking about me. So I personally do not give my children pacifiers. The reason is because I am so hyper-focused and hypersensitive to what they're trying to tell me that I'm not trying to shush them or lull them or pacify them. I want to take care of what's causing them to cry. So I get this a lot. I hear a lot of people say, wow, your baby's so smiley. Your baby barely cries. Your baby is always, and I actually, for a time period in my life, I took one of my babies came to the office with me. I mean, this is when I was working in a different organization. And I was allowed to bring my baby to the office because everyone knew that my baby never cried. The moment they cried, I was always aware, oh, they just ate. Okay, so in a few minutes, they'll probably be making because their system is a lot smaller. Again, they're humans. The system works the same way. It's just in smaller increments. So it takes an adult or a child, really. It takes us from the point of drinking. If we pace back and forth, it takes us about 8 to 16 minutes, if I understand correctly, for us to need to go to the bathroom from that drink. So with that said, our body is a certain speed and a little baby sometimes goes a little bit quicker. So being aware of, okay, my baby's schedule is he just ate. And so therefore, our next step is probably he's going to be happy or she's going to be happy. And she's going to need to go to she's going to need to, or she's going to make in her diaper. So I was pretty much, I always tried to be aware of, okay, what could the next stage be? So that when the next stage comes, I'm able to be ahead of the game. And I'm like, oh, this is why they're getting fussy. I go and I check the diaper. Lo and behold, there it is, right? So being aware of that and not pacifying them, in my opinion, again, this might be controversial. This is my own take on it. Take it or leave it. but I want to hear what they have to say. And I never want my child to grow up thinking, mommy just sticks something in my mouth and she doesn't hear what I'm trying to tell her. So I am very aware that the main mode of communication that babies have is through crying. And so therefore I want to hear every cry so I can solve every cry. Another thing that I will share is that I took a course called Dunstan Baby Language. I strongly suggest for everyone to take it. I've actually shared it with many, many, many of my friends. I have a friend who's currently raving about it. She called me late at night and she was like, I can't figure out what's wrong with my baby. Can you please be the baby whisperer? And I solved her problem. I figured out exactly what was wrong with her baby. And afterwards I said, if you really want to sleep or you really want to, live a happy life, I would tell you to take this course. And it has made a huge, huge, huge difference in her life. I'll tell you, go search on YouTube, Dunstan, Dunstan, baby language. She has had many interviews where she speaks about what it is, and she basically explains, I'm going to make it short. Yes, Dunstan baby language. Thank you for typing it up. She basically explains that the way the babies, the pre-cry, not the wah, once they're like already hyped up and screaming heavily, but the like that little noise that sometimes we don't even notice, those little noises actually are different. And they are actually a reflex that the baby is trying to. So for example, when a baby suckles and they eat, so they move their tongue towards the back of their mouth, towards the roof of their mouth, and that's the suckling motion. So when they're getting hungry, they start to practice that suckling motion while they make noise. So for example, hunger sounds like nah, nah. So if you start listening to a newborn or a baby, I mean, my baby now she grew out of it. Sometimes I hear it, but it's mostly prevalent in newborns, first like 3-4 months. You can start to hear the nah. So the Eibusher literally gives us the refuah before the machla. So here Hashem is telling us, your baby wants to communicate. And so I'm going to give you how the baby is going to communicate. You just need to be good at listening to it. So again, I strongly suggest for everyone to, in preparation for having their baby, check out Dunstan baby language. And you'll be able to, I for myself, I know back in the day when I used to go on the subway, I could literally hear babies and be like, oh, if only I could tell her mommy, what's going on. The baby's trying to tell you something. So she explains and she teaches you how to hear all the sounds. It is incredible. And if you ever need help, I have earned myself the title of the baby whisperer. So if you ever need help listening, I've gotten pretty good at listening to it over the phone as well. Okay. That was another step of newborns. And another step of newborns is to figure out your nursing earlier on. So don't wait till baby has lost weight, or don't wait till baby has, jaundice, and then chas v'shalom you have to go get baby special light and all that stuff. Be proactive about your nursing. Be proactive about making sure that your baby is being well fed. Because a lot of issues also start through, it's not a magical thing that suddenly happens. Nursing is a learned skill, and we have to learn it. We have to work on it, and we have to be prepared. So I want to give you guys a hint. We do have an incredible class in our life skills series. You can check it out on YouTube with Sarah Chana Silverstein, and she speaks about nursing. And also I would definitely suggest learning as much as you can about nursing beforehand so that you're prepared. Okay, so that's the not so short tidbit on that. So I am going to, there's a lot more on newborns, but I think this is something good to start with. Okay, so I want to share, and I guess we will, hold on. I think I'm going to stop this recording and then put a separate recording with this part.